What's up, guys? This is Anthony from Anthony's Customs, and I'm back with another X-Men related Marvel Legends review. This is Cyclops. Now, this isn't every version of Cyclops. There are a couple goofy versions, and there's one, Ultimate version, where he's all navy blue with the yellow pinstripes. I don't care for that one too much. These are the three I would choose from if I was picking one and only one to have. So that's why I'm showing you these three. If you don't have one yet, I suggest you pick one of these. Let's start off with this one, Jim Lee style. This is unfortunately my favorite. I say unfortunately because there's so many things wrong with this figure. However, I grew up on the X-Men cartoon, which was based on the Jim Lee comics, and that's this style. So I had to pick this one as my favorite. Unfortunately, this one is really beat up, and it mostly came that way from the package. I did not do that to it. He does come with some goofy gimmicky thing that plugs into his back, and I think his eyes light up actually. I don't have that. I don't really care to have it. But let's go ahead and talk about the figure. He does have the Jim Lee head sculpt, so that's nice. He has the hair and everything. Not the hooded Cyclops that many people prefer. He has these extra shoulder pieces of articulation, which I really don't care for. They don't really add anything and they just get stuck. So standard ball joint shoulder on top of that, bicep swivel, double jointed elbow, wrist rotation, wrist pivot, and a finger pivot. And he has the two fingers to do that sort of thing to make his optic blast fire. Same thing on this side, except he has a kind of open hand which closes to make a pretty decent fist. Not the best, but it's okay. He has an ab crunch, which is done pretty well because you get the strap all the way through. So I like that. Decent ab crunch. It looks pretty good no matter how you do it. So decent job there. He has a waist twist. T-jointed hips, so that's a plus. Thigh swivel built in. Double jointed knees. Shin swivel at the in between the bootstraps. That could have been handled a lot more nicely with a little bit of finesse. They should have cut it a little better, I think. Probably at the top of the boot instead of in between, because you can it really stands out. I think it's pretty ugly. And then he has the ankle pivot, no ankle rocker, at least on this foot. This one doesn't seem to work. There's no room for it, but this one has a little bit of room, so it has an ankle rocker and a toe joint. So overall, I mean, it has the makings of a good figure. The only problems is he's really super duper skinny. He has no crotch area to speak of. It's just belt and whatever you want to call that. I'm not even going to go there. So he's just got really tiny lower abdominal torso crotch thing. Narrow chest, lanky shoulders, skinny legs. It's not nearly as cool of a figure as it should have been. So hopefully we get a remake of this guy. I don't see that happening, but if it does, I'll be psyched, because it's not nearly as good as it should have been. That being said, it is the only Jim Lee version we have, so I do suggest you pick it up. Let's move on. These guys are both the same figure, just with different paint scheme. So not too complicated of a review for these guys. Actually, here, this one stands 6 1/4. These guys stand 6 1/2. So these guys are bulkier and bigger, which is what I think that one should have been. If you look, he's just kind of wimpy and puny. Much better, in my opinion, these two. These are both from, I think, the Sentinel series. I think so, and this is X-Men Classics. It's not technically Marvel Legends. Okay, so let's go on to these guys. We have the blue and yellow version, and we have the blue with white version. I personally prefer the blue with white. He's got the more of a bronzish color for the visor, and he's got obviously the lighter blue and then the white detailing. And this one has the gold visor with the darker blue and yellow highlighting. They're both great. I just prefer this one because I had the toy of it when I was little. Maybe some of you remember. It looked like this, but it had this thing that went on his arms, and it looked goofy, but he lit up, so that was nice. Anyway, let's talk about these guys. Head articulation, somewhat limited. It's just kind of an old school ball peg So he rotates side to side, has just a little bit of forward and back movement. Standard ball joint shoulder, no gimmicky extra shoulder joint in there. Bicep swivel, double jointed elbow, wrist rotation. They're always frozen. I haven't had these guys posed in forever. The wrist does rotate at the glove. I'll find one of them that works. There we go. The wrist rotates inside the glove, so that's nice. And a wrist hinge and a finger hinge. And this hand is sculpted well enough to where it counts as the optic blast, even though it's not just the 2 fingers like the other figure. It'll work, and you can get it to line up the way you need it to. I'm just not going to spend the effort right now. That's pretty close. Okay, no torso articulation at all, and they sculpted a belly button. I think because this is the same body, I mean, I know it's the same body as Namor, so I'm assuming that's why the belly button's on there, but it just looks really bad on Cyclops since he's wearing a suit. Waist rotation, T-jointed hips. They're the old school hips, so they go forward and back and then side to side, and then the thigh swivel is down here like a DC figure, but it doesn't look bad because the legs are pretty much round, so other than having the cut there, it doesn't look bad. Double jointed knees, big boots. His foot or his ankle does rotate inside the boot. He has an ankle pivot, an ankle rocker, and a toe joint. Of course, they both share the same articulation as far as paint goes. They both have this blue dry brushing on top of black. This blue's a lot lighter. The dry brushing's a lot, it's not technically heavier. The dry brushing's lighter on here. There's a lot more black showing through. And the faces are pretty much painted the same. So they actually look really, really good. I love the face painting on this guy. And the sculpting is great. This guy has a belt. It's pretty kind of junky, but it is there. It's got the red belt with the painted X logo. And then they both have the colored boots. The sculpt work on the boots and on the gloves is really nice. You've got the seams throughout, so very nice detail there. Seams everywhere. The sole is sculpted. You can actually see the stitching in between the shoe upper and the sole. So that's really, really nice sculpting there. The gloves are sculpted very well. Are there any seams? I don't think there's actually any seams on the gloves, but they're sculpted nicely with wrinkles and everything you would expect. And then the head actually has some seams sculpted onto it. Mine has a blemish, obviously, but overall they just did a really good job with the sculpting that they did on this guy. I wish they didn't use the Namor belly button, but they did, so what are you going to do? I probably would suggest either of these guys if there wasn't a Jim Lee version, but since I needed a Jim Lee Cyclops, I have to suggest this guy. Probably just buy all of them and be safe. In my opinion, they're all great figures and I highly recommend them. Thanks for watching, guys. Stay tuned for a couple more reviews, and in the meantime, keep collecting.